Adelaide have absolutely picked up where they left off last season.
Yeah.
They were minor premiers.
Inside 50, Houghton dropped it. Hatchard there on the last line. Tonnen wrapped up. They were challenged, the Adelaide Crows, but they had all the answers in showdown number 3. Made to earn it by the power, but they win by 14 points.
Alrighty, hello and welcome to the Creedcast. Thank you for being here with us as always. Whatever your proclivity may be, taking that one today. But, a reminder, just quickly, to if you like and subscribe or follow, I think is Spotify's term for following on the podcast. There, subscribe on YouTube, like the videos if you do it that way, and even if you don't, pop across there if you have a YouTube account and just give the videos a like and subscribe on there as well. It all just helps the algorithms do their thing. And we really appreciate all the support. It's really humbling at times to, find, when people message it and reach out with support or just, even just the interactions based off of the podcast. It's good to, really feels good to that people get that value. And today's episode will be a little bit different. We're reviewing our Aflw ladies, their showdown loss last night, and then previewing the upcoming game against Geelong. And we're recording this on Sunday afternoon, which is a different time for us as well. We're fitting it in. I appreciate Jamie taking some time out of his Father's Day to do that for me, because I am, as I mentioned on the podcast last week, I'm flying out back to Adelaide on Monday to be there in time for the qualifying final. So I've kind of bouncing around a few things, but we're fitting the time here to do this. So, yeah, Jamie, thank you for taking the time out. And you had a fun day out at Alberton yesterday, and it was good to see some stories come out of that. And how was it? Before we get into the show, the game itself, and all the stats, I just want to hear how it was down there.
Hello, Dave, and hello, listeners and viewers. It was fantastic. Alberton Oval was packed and it was pumped. Oh, and before I go into it, happy Father's Day to any listeners who are also fathers. I hope you've had a good day. As Dave said, we're recording this on Sunday, 1st of September, Father's Day. So yeah, I hope everyone's had a good day. Alberton was great. First time I've seen the new lights in action, and I got a pretty decent park. I drove down and I got a pretty decent park. Thankfully enough, I missed the first 5 to 10 minutes of the match. Just have had a big weekend, so very busy. And I was walking down, and wow, like the lights span quite far. Pretty boring topic, to be honest. And everyone will remember the kind of backlash from the proposal of the Alberton Precinct project. And I did spare a bit of a thought for the people right on the fringes by Alberton Oval. I was like, you got some pretty bright lights in your front yard, but
National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation when he flicks the lights on and fucking
fucking overwhelming.
Margot and Todd, the yuppies living next door, are just tripping over themselves.
There was a bit of that, and but it's like, oh well, that's progress, I suppose. And but before I go too far into it, obviously, just want to give a couple of shout outs. So at Alberton Oval last night, bumped into Alan Power. Awesome name. Thank you for listening. Alan was walking past me and recognized me, which was quite heartwarming. So good on you, Alan. And obviously got a huge shout out to Stu, Patreon member Stu. Stu and I caught up. He'd come over from Victoria for family and leisure and business, I guess you could say. But we spent a bit of time at halftime and the second half just chatting and get to know one another. So it's good to meet our listeners and good to say hello, put faces to names and voices to names as well, because we're generally only really talking via written communication. But really heartwarming. It's good. It's good. We've had a lot of good feedback as of late, as you are aware, and a lot of different people have been contacting us. So it's good to know that people are enjoying our content and we're building a little bit of a community. And obviously we have aims to grow that even further and and get to know a lot more people who appreciate our content. So yeah, just a couple of shout outs there from the night. But yeah, back to Alberton Oval and the game itself, just as a whole, yeah, it was a great spectacle. Over 5,000 people there, which is fantastic.
I think it was a sellout in the end.
It was
I think
a
I saw,
sellout.
yeah.
Yeah. There was obviously a large proportion of maybe members who didn't end up going because some of those temporary stands had a bit of space left in them.
Yeah.
But in saying that, like never had. There's a grassed area between the high performance center and those temporary stands, and never had a tent set up. And there was a grassed area, and there was actually a lot of people just kind of socializing in that area. Bit of a village green type feel to it, which was cool. The Adelaide Oval members, you know what I'm talking about, that large green area out the back of the members stand that a lot of people tend to miss out on cricket by sitting there. But yeah, had a cool feel. Really a big bottleneck in front of the high performance center and the basketball courts and the field. But yeah. No, I really enjoyed it. Really, like I said in last week's episode, really enjoyed the chance to get back to Alberton Oval because, it's obviously our heartland, our soul, as we've mentioned a few times, and seeing the girls run out in the prison bars was a very wholesome experience.
Yeah. I can't wait to get down there and see it because the last time I even popped past Albert, it might have been one of the women's games back in 2022, actually. So, and that we know just how much it's grown since that time and changed with the development. So I'm really excited to see it. It was good to see on TV and just see the crowd there and see our home and our heartland, God's country, as you called it last week, up in lights on national TV, so to speak, for AFL competition. And the prison bars, good to see again, twice in a couple of weeks. We've seen it in the AFL competition as well. And the result obviously didn't go our way, but I think the girls, as far as, we look for, even in losses, you look for the positives and the attitude towards it. And they certainly didn't do the prison bars any harm, and they kind of did the Guernsey proud, which is all the base level of what we can ask for. Kind of one of those tenements of the creed is, if you there can be honour in losing if you've left everything out in the field, and I think they did. Skills are, we'll get into it. Skills and stuff like that are still developing, but that's not like they deliberately play. Their skills are where they're at because they're still developing. There's such a young side still by comparison. Found it really, when watching to start getting some game stuff. The duo at Adelaide, I think they're co-captains now as well. Anne Hatchard and Ebony Marinoff, who had really, really good games for them. It's like, how old are they? And so I did a bit of a Google last night while I was watching, and they're both 26. And whereas, our main ball winners are the likes of Sachi Simon and Shanae Goody, who had an incredible debut. What a fucking star she's going to be. But, they're both like Sachi feels like, she's an inaugural lister, but she's only 20 still. Shanae Goody's just making her debut. So and Abby Darrick's in her, early 20s as well. So all of our main ball winners and main grunt runners are still young. And then obviously the ones that were recruited that have high level futures, hopefully, in the likes of Piper Window and stuff, they're playing their first games, they're 18. So when you look at Anne Hatchett and Emily Marinoff and then just some of their other veterans, they've got some good young talent coming through as well. But yeah, they're just the age profile and development, where they are in development is just completely different. So I found that I just was actually curious. I was like, they've been around for a while. I'm going to Google, and that kind of helps frame the discussion of the game, I think, when you've got their two stars who are legitimate stars, have played incredible games. And I think Marinoff got the medal, the Showdown medal, and deserving.
You might be right.
Yeah, deserving that she was. But the fact that we kept it tight, never got out to more than a 16-point lead, I think was the most it got out to at any point in the game, which when we think back to the first Showdown, which was just a one-side demolition job by 60-odd points. Yeah. And then last year, while we were ahead at halftime, we ended up losing by 5 goals to keep it tight. And it's fun to have a showdown. Showdown, like, well, it's not fun to have a showdown loss, but it is fun to even just be doing oh man, if the umpires hadn't made this decision, maybe we could,
Well, I
um,
mean, in
yeah.
reality, like whether they were there or not, and I think you could remain balanced, you could probably say that a couple. So we're obviously referring to the particular ones that were given away in front of goal. And
Mhm.
look, on the night, it did feel pretty harsh. And ruck, the ruck battle in all Australian rules football can be a bit of a lottery in terms of free kicks. To remain balanced, a couple of them probably were there, but I think I saw you have a conversation with someone online where it's probably like a couple of other ones for a bit of 50-50 grappling that, in such a compromising position on the field for us to be penalized for it was, yeah, seemed a bit harsh. And in reality, if you want to put it down to ill discipline, it is pretty much what separated us from a win
Mhm.
and a loss, which to put that into perspective is quite encouraging. That you obviously got to learn a lot from it to try and avoid that. But yeah, just to know, and I mean, effort, tackling pressure, wearing the prison bars, emphasizing it a little bit, tackling pressure and that type of thing. I think under Lauren Arnell has always been a big focus since we
Mhm.
came in. Obviously, with a young side, a, a, creating synergy and trying to get the team to gel, skills and things like that will come with time. But if anything, and I mean, like we chatted even with the men's program, it like if anything, just bring that effort, and that's what they do, and that's what they did for a lot of the first half. I thought we were actually quite dominant, and there was large portions of the game where we had them bedded down in our forward half. Unfortunately, we didn't capitalize on that, and we left ourselves exposed to Adelaide's much more fluent transition game
Mm.
out of defense, where they kind of cashed in a little bit from that. Yeah, synergy between lines, that a bit cleaner ball use as well. But yeah. When considering what you said about some of the ages of our major players, that effort was really quite satisfying.
Mhm.
Would probably be the word I would say. Obviously, not satisfying to lose the game, and we want to be heading in the direction where we're winning more than we're losing. But when we do have 3 showdowns now for context, and each one has provided an improved performance on our behalf. So you take that for what it is as well.
Mhm. Yeah, I think each showdown has essentially seen the deficit halved, like 60 points to 30 points now to 15 odd points. Like, so next time we should be within a goal, and then anything can happen, right? Not that anything's that linear in sports, but you can hopefully look at that as the next marker that we can be within a goal near the end, if not ahead. That would be the hope next year. But yeah, it was. I think one of the key things, just touching back on that, yeah, the ruck battle thing. It was interesting to note that the ruck hitouts was very even. Olivia Levicki had
Mm.
20 and Scholes had 19. I think they grew into the game. I think it probably was a little bit of a good test for Matilda straight up to have. She had to battle and with those free kicks, probably learn a little bit of something there that, in the 50-50 stuff to try to, it's what we talk about when we're reviewing a lot of AFL men's games is that, the dark arts a little bit. Sometimes you've got to, if you're going to, you can grapple and do, you've just got to be you've got to find that line and maybe got little bit exposed there. But I think it was a little bit harsh treatment at times as well because they kind of a lot got let go at times as well. And then just suddenly
Yeah.
the whistle would go for these decisions in the forward 50, so which was or the defensive 50 for us, which was frustrating. The other thing was just getting absolutely smashed out of the center clearance. It was 10-3 across the game, which for that, with us struggling, like their defense, whenever we got forward, if they got possession back, often they could stream through the middle of the ground and get it back into their forward 50, which I think the inside 50s was 42-27 their way, obviously. So that kind of they could find their way forward at any through multiple ways, but the centre clearance, because that was probably our one way that we were going to, if after a goal, try to get it into our defence, our forward 50 and try to lock it in a little bit and get a scoring opportunity, because we were actually I thought we actually had a fairly good return for our inside 50 entries as far as looking dangerous with the, whether it be Gemma or Saint or Teakle, and as well as the others that are around there. We looked dangerous enough when we got it forward, just probably didn't get it forward enough. And the
our first goal, sorry to cut you off, our first goal came off of a very pleasing passage of play, and Houghton was involved in that, and obviously ended up in Teakle's hands. And that was just a moment where you go like that. If that can be replicated a lot more, like it was a lot of clean disposal, some good chains of possession, and like Houghton can break the lines and kind of bust through some tackles as well, and some of that physical pressure from the opposition. Compartmentalize that and replicate it. That's awesome. Just to go off what you're saying.
Yeah, and that was that Gemma kick, that setup kick. I think I put it on Twitter. I was just like, it was a really nice kick, kind of.
Yeah,
I think it was back.
Teakle presented well as well, like at the same time.
And she's improved
there.
Yeah, I remember her, even just her goal kicking's improved. I just remember her being a bit shaky maybe the first year. I can't remember, but there's a lot of things that have improved, and that's just one thing to note.
And even from early days of AFLW as a whole, set shot goal kicking, and like you got to get your head around the fact that like we're not getting the 50-meter bombs and stuff like that that you will in the men's game. So there's a little bit of distance on it. It does make it.
Ewings kicked one from 50 last year, didn't she? Maybe it was the first year.
Doesn't surprise me with someone like Ewings, but the point I was trying to make.
I was just I tangented for a second in my own brain.
And I mean, that doesn't surprise me with someone like Hannah Ewings, but Teakle's set shot was from maybe 30 meters out, 35, and going back years ago. Sometimes that would end up maybe at the top of the goal square, or a contest in the goal square where maybe it wasn't 30, 35 out, maybe it was a bit closer, but it was a fair enough distance where
I thought there was a degree of difficulty.
You'd be going, maybe, but she nailed it. And it went through halfway post up from my recollection. It was a really good kick. So going off what you said, that improvement in forward craft, but also goal kicking itself as well was encouraging again.
It kept us in the game at times, because they did, like, their ability to, like I said, take it out of the center bounce when they could, to immediately get back into some defensive 50 pressure on our end. Our ability to, whenever we did get the chances to convert, especially early, I think we kicked well while the Crows were actually a little bit wayward at times with their opportunities, which helped us out as well. But that's footy. It probably was the one the only one that I think we really missed. I mean, Ashley Saint kicking the fat side of the ball when she was going for the check side late in the game.
They were great opportunities to really put some pressure on the Crows. And I think there was that one, and then there might have been one on the other side of the goals not long after that, if I remembering correctly. But that I know the one you're talking about in particular. It's like, oh damn it, you're right there in goal kicking range, and unfortunately, there
was the one where we had the numbers going forward, and I can't remember if it was Gemma handball to Teakle, and they probably could have got another handball possession in there and gotten a little bit closer to goal, but Teakle went for goal from I think 40 on the run, and I don't think it missed it. I can't recall if it missed terribly, but it might have just faded.
I agree with you though.
That was probably that was an opportunity as well.
A bit of rush of blood to the head in that moment.
If she'd converted, none of us would be saying anything. So I like that she seems to have her confidence has grown as well. So I really like Teakle actually. She's a good, especially because a lot of our tool forward plaudits go to the likes of Gemma and Saint. Teakle as an option down there, and then obviously with playing the two rucks that we did last night, both of them get a bit involved down there as well. So
I thought Lauren Arnell rotated the rucks fairly evenly. You mentioned the hitouts ended up fairly even. There was periods where I would look up and Vicky was in ruck, and I'm like, oh okay, because I made my kind of opinion fairly felt in regards to Matilda Schultz last week. Like,
I think we
I'm
all,
gonna
I think we all love her.
absolutely biased in all of my assessments when it comes to Matilda Schultz. But so I just straight off the bat expect her to just be that 90% ruck. But it from what I can recall, it was fairly even and in the moment in periods of the game, it was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe that, she's getting a break because she's not really performing at her best. However, I watched the first half again last night, and although our center clearance work wasn't that great, she actually had a much better first half than I recall watching live. She still does some things around the ground, like for her age, for the length of time that AFLW at the professional level has been around. She does some things that you're just like, oh, fucking, you're just awesome. Like, you're going to be great. So I was happily surprised that my initial assessment, where I thought, she's had a pretty shit game, probably not her best game, admittedly, but particularly in that first half, there was a lot of good things that she did do and kind of bucked my opinion a little bit of her game. Again, I'm going to be completely biased in a lot of my assessments, but I was happy to find out that I was a little bit wrong. And she didn't have a great game, but she didn't have an absolutely terrible game. She was still putting a lot of body on, a lot of pressure, and still managed to get her hand in some hit outs where she looked out of position, but just found herself winning the hit out in the end, which was great. The first game of the season. So a lot to build on.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about another one in our youthful crop of players at the Port Lady Pear. That's what I'm going to start referring to them on pod rather.
Lady Pears.
Lady Pear, yeah. She's one of many that is, in that, 1920 bracket of age. So they've got so much development ahead as well, but she's already, the fact that we've got that expectation on her is a good thing. And she's growing well. I guess since the ball did spend a fair bit of time in our defensive half, I was really impressed with their ability to stick with the battle in the defensive half. It was constant at times, because we just couldn't break through the Adelaide press. So we'd finally get possession and kick it out, and then it would just come straight back in. The likes of Borg and Germesh, O'Day.
I thought Germesh had a surprisingly good game in my opinion.
I thought a lot of the Caitlin Wendland's another one that's come in as an injury replacement player.
For sure.
Yeah, there was there's some moments I think at the end of Wendland almost took a mark at with a second to go in the first quarter, I think, which would have got us with a decent opportunity set shot. I was like, damn it. But overall, I thought her game.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Germesh is another one of our new recruits for this season, isn't she?
Yeah, she was recruited out of Central Districts as one of the injury replacement players. I'm 99% sure.
Yeah. There was a couple of times where she attacked the ball fantastically well, but she had some cleanliness about the way that she did, which provided a bit of run out of the back line, which, for a new player in our system, I was, really impressed with some of her efforts on the night.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, if anyone is listening and I've gotten that wrong, because I don't, for some reason, my note from last week where I had some of the stats of where these players have come from, it's just not opening up properly right now, but I'll go back to my notes for this one. But Germesh, Wendland, obviously Shanae Goody, but we'll get to that. I just want to focus on the defensive side of it a little bit more, because I really, with O'Day again, just crashing through and having a typical. There's a few little bump, after when the ball's
Waterhouse got her good in one particular moment on the game. Bumped her a couple of times legally and fairly, and credit to Jess Waterhouse. But really appreciated the fight back, or the bit of
just a little bit of niggle
forth between O'Day and her, just saying you won this time, but I'm still here. I mean business, and let's see who wins the next contest.
I was like, how good are the vibes of the day rocking the glove as well?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Again, just kind of a little eccentric, even though gloves in footy isn't really out
Yeah.
of the norm too much.
It does
But
seem a
yeah,
little bit like
he's just a
so
character.
rare these days though. Like, but it did look very similar to the Tread Race glove, is what it reminded me of.
Yeah,
His Nike
yeah.
glove that he had back
But
in the
she's at
day.
the
So,
other end of
yeah,
the ground. So, yeah.
yeah. No, I love that. But yeah, Emily Borg again, just another one of our young ones. She's only, I think she's 21, 22 now, maybe. But
Yeah, and
um,
she was on the radio. She was on
okay.
what was it, Sports Day SA
Hmm.
earlier in the week. Really impressive interview. Carried herself a lot more maturely than one would presume for a lady of her age.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a really good interview. I encourage. Uh, Obviously, these girls are fairly new to media and all of this that comes about with playing sport at the highest level in their particular sport. But I encourage anyone listening to us right now to go and listen to that interview with was it Blighty and Will? I'm not too
It
sure.
is
Blighty might have been
if
taking
it's
a rest.
if it's yeah, is it still Blighty and Wilds to do it? My cousin was
It is,
actually
yeah, yeah.
my cousin's
But
the producer for
Blighty's
that
been
show.
taking a bit of time off recently, so
Yeah,
sometimes Daniel Menzel fills in, and I
yeah.
think someone else has also filled in recently. But all in all, the interview. Sorry to cut you off and extend upon that cut off,
No,
but
no,
the
I
interview was
like.
really impressive, and it kind of just makes sense. Some of the mature and yeah, mature efforts and calmness that she has on the contest,
Mm,
because she's obviously a very, very well put together and mentally level-headed person.
yeah, yeah. She's been one that's impressed me right from the off. I think well, randomly we've got got a bunch of the AFLW player badges that first year, and at that first game, my wife was at the fence and got the Borg badge signed by her. So that one's always been a special one for us.
Yeah.
I think you and I were actually chatting while my wife had disappeared to the fence, and she came.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, she did. Yeah,
we
and
were
then we had to
standing
find
there. Yeah, I was
her.
like, she's disappeared, and then she came running over, and she's like, I got my badge signed by Borg. So
Mm-mm.
yeah, that's still somewhere here. We've got it kind of in a nice little plastic baggie to keep it protected. But yeah, love her and love again. I think it's really important to just note how under siege they were at times with just the good ball use by the Crows, the repeated entries, and the battle, because it was often there was a lot of high kicks they were having to commit to, aerial contest, and it was physical. But we were good tackling pressure, good pressure just to make sure the Crows didn't. The Crows had to earn every goal they got. Obviously, we will say a few shots were again
Yeah.
cheap because of they got like 4 or 5 free kicks within 25 meters of goal. They did shank a couple of them, so that did help us out a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit.
one
But
was really
oh,
bad and
geez,
really fortunate for us. Yeah,
yeah,
I think it went out in the full, didn't
it
it?
did. Yeah, it kind of floated. It was one of those
Real
really
side of the boot.
ugly kicks that just floats
Yeah.
out. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, we had to. Unlike again, just comparing back to that first showdown as a point of context as to development, yeah, they were just fucking finding it easy to get to goal on that one. I was there
Yeah, it was a training run.
Adelaide Oval that night, and yeah, it was very. But whereas this game, it was really nice to know that even though I was watching it the whole time, I was thinking, this is probably going to prove to be a bridge too far because they just kept us at bay. Just we could never get within 2 or 3 points and really ask the question. We got within, got it under into single digits, but then that would be when there'd be one of those free kicks and they'd get it back out to 14, 15 points or
Yeah,
whatever it may
just
be.
take all the air out of the tires a little bit in that moment
Yeah, but it did feel
when that
nice
happened.
to be in there knowing that even though they are making most of the running in the game, yes, they'll get their opportunities. I was watching the game, and as the game grew into the game, we actually grew into the game as well. Our last
Yep, I agree.
quarter and a half
Yeah,
was really good, I thought. It was nice to know that if we just get a couple of breaks, if we can get a couple of quick ones, then it's right back in. So yeah, I was really impressed and knowing that. That's what I was trying to say, and then I kept on moving my tangents. But knowing that the defense, even under siege, was performing well, I was just thinking I have trust in them to not give up on the fight. And if we do get that 1 or 2 goals, then they can, they might get a free kick or whatever, and as it were, where they did get a goal and kind of just keep that gap at that, keep us at bay. But just having the trust in the defense, and then again, probably the middle of the field and the transition was where he really fell down for to not be able to generate as many chances. But just knowing that if we got it forward as well, I had trust in the forward line that there was some dynamism there. You know, Saint moving up and down the field. Gemma was doing the similar role. There was a few people that noted Saint being put into the middle a little bit on Twitter last night as well, which I thought was just nice to see that kind of dynamism as we talk about in the men's side a lot as well. The shifting the magnets and trying a few different things. I thought the coaching was good in that sense as well. We just it changed as again, it gave the girls the opportunity to grow into the game as well. And yeah, I was really impressed at both ends. Again, the transition game's just going to come down to repetition, working out the synergy between lines that you mentioned in the preview. And
I think, on that note, I think our biggest area for improvement in regards to transition is that what I noticed is that more frequently than we would like, we bombed away to try and get out of pressure. Whereas and again, just contrasting it with the Crows, who have a lot more pre-seasons under their belt as a club in the AFLW competition, I think there's a lot more opportunities for us to find a teammate and try and link up through handball or even short kicks. And I think it's something that we actually started doing well in the first portions of the game, but as the game wore on and as the final result was maybe entering the minds of our players, sometimes, we blazed away and to our detriment, whereas we just needed to keep our cool a little bit more and link up to advance it up the ground. That's probably one constructive criticism that I would make on that transition aspect of the game, where improve that ever so slightly and just keep a cooler head in some of those moments. You're bridging the gap between a couple of goal loss and potentially a couple of goal win.
Yeah, I think that's going to come with time and confidence as well, because you can just tell a few of them probably aren't as. There's a few uncontested, almost chess marks that get dropped here and there as well. Which
and there was a period where it happened in kind of like a lot happened in a short amount of time, and he's like, just mark it because that's pressure either all gone or all in. I know what you mean.
Whereas you can see the Crows when they're picking out kicks and working their way, they just have that confidence. Just the body language with the Crows is just an air of quiet confidence. And when they attack the ball or go for a mark, it's with confidence that this is mine. Whereas ours is, and it is the youthful exuberance as well. It is just youth and far less experience. Again, these are all just things that'll come with time. You need to get your kind of 1,000 hours or 10,000 hours or whatever
10,000 hours.
And a lot of these girls are just still not close to that yet. But there's just lots of signs of improvement there as well. I'm just trying to go through my notes here to think if I'm missing anything. Because I know we should just know. I know we'll get to our Player of the Year votes that we'll do in a bit. But one note I wanted to bring up with you is interesting. Obviously, with Hannah Ewings on personal leave from the club and football in general. The other player, I mistakenly thought it was Abby Derrick last week, but then I remembered that it was Sarah Goodwin who's playing at the Crows now, and she had a decent game, and I'm thinking. Not that a lot of our list management things I have no problems with because that was just a move that they made, and but now looking back at that draft, it's going to be an interesting one if we look back at that draft. And again, I'm just projecting forward in just as a hypothetical. If Ewings doesn't come back, which we all hope she does, but whatever is best for her and what she wants to do with her life is fine by us as well. Just hopefully it's sport footy because we love her and she's a gun. But the other pick we took in that draft was Sarah Goodwin, and if it turns out the way it could in one hypothetical and Ewing's, going off and doing what she wants to do outside of footy and then Sarah Goodwin being a decent player for the Crows, it'll be like, God, that was a really good draft. It just didn't work out for us at all.
Yeah. To be honest, I remember that year and I think Sarah Goodwin plays for Glenelg in the SANFLW and that's where she was recruited from. And I actually was happy that we recruited her, but I always kind of had the feeling that she would go to the Crows.
Okay.
I think, there was something. maybe there was like a little promo on her before she was drafted and whatnot that
Mhm.
maybe alluded to the fact that she was a Crows person.
Yeah.
So when we drafted her, I obviously knew her worth, but yeah, had a bad feeling that that would happen. And then when we traded her, I was not really that surprised, and yeah, she's obviously showing kind of her talent. Well, she
Mm.
showed the last night what's there, and yeah, it is a bit those sliding doors moments of drafting and trading and in the AFL landscape. But hopefully hopefully we get Hannah Ewings back, and or if we don't, hopefully we're just pushing on and playing finals and hopefully winning premierships without Sarah Goodwin,
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was interesting. I noticed her a lot last night. I was like, yeah, damn it. But because she kind of was in and out of the team that first year when we had her under in our side.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, hey, good for her that she's but yeah, no, just hopefully she's on the losing side of a few more showdowns going forward. But speaking, going to a more positive lens, some of the pickups we got, we obviously mentioned some of the injury replacement players, but Shanae Goody have a debut. Jesus Christ.
Have a debut, yeah. Have a debut, Shanae Goody. Yeah. And some of the talk about cleanliness of possession, like,
Mm,
yeah, that was on full display. And um you definitely hope that continues. And I mean, in a competition where disposal efficiency, again, you can't compare it between
mm.
men's and women's. It is just different. Talent levels are different. You've got to be looking for different things to highlight. But even in saying that, her disposal efficiency was nearly 74%, when on average, just on the eye test, looking at the stat sheet, maybe we're about 60%, if that.
No, 54% is what we ran at for the game,
Yeah,
54.3.
so
So yeah,
like for a person on debut to handle the ball that well, great signs. Yeah, she had a fantastic debut for us.
yeah, there was one point in the commentary, and I think it was in the third quarter. Maybe I'm just going up to my nats, my stats. It is 12:42 a.m. here, so forgive me. And I did some day drinking today for college football being
Yeah, we're going
back.
to be on
So
the same time zone soon. So
yes, yeah, the next episode will be in the same time zone. Um, yeah, it was in the third quarter. I noted it when the commentators mentioned it. I think she'd had Goody had 7 kicks to that point, and she was 100% by foot at that point. So yeah, that was by
yeah,
foot. So yeah, and my second note, because I did the same thing I do for the men's games, I just kept quarter by quarter notes, and they're full of spelling mistakes. It's just me typing at them, watching. But
yeah,
my second note of the game was Goody present early, good hand in contest, and so yeah, she was involved in the contest. I think she had a going back to my stats sheet. She had where am I looking? Sorry, I found I had to find some different avenues to find easy stats for the AFLW because I just didn't have them the same on one of the websites I like for the men's game. I am just struggling to find her name on my. Oh, there we go. Fucking hell. 8 contested possessions in her 15 disposals there. So she was third, fourth best on the team behind Maria Maloney, who had 9. Derek had 10, and then Sachi Simon had 13. All players mentioned there had good games as well. Um,
hmm
very present. But yeah, that's it. And her running power and just her composure, like she looks like it's not like every type of player, every type of body can be a football player. Like it's not like I'm saying she looks like a football player as a detriment to others, but just there is a kind of flashy midfielder mold when they run. You just know what a good player that's confident and
yeah,
has a natural, like whether it be watching Chris Judd run or Gary Ablett Jr. run, like guys that just some of those contemporaries of the AFL men's game that you just see early in their careers. Because I remember watching both of them early in their careers. I was like that, they move like
yeah.
a
They've got
Brownlow
that
winning.
je ne
Yeah.
sais quoi.
Yes. Yes. That thing. Yes. Um, and yeah, just the first time that she got on the run and for her goal, just watching that highlight a couple of times as I have today, as it's been posted on the socials, just the way she moves is like a football player, like high level potential all like not trying to put too much pressure on her early, but she had an incredible debut and she looked like the kind of midfielder that's going to be up for awards in years to come. And
This is
certainly,
and this is the fruits of the talent pathway that we've now opened by having a professional competition for women. Is we're going to see this every year now. People will come in, and because they've had that pathway, they're a much better rounded footballer. So, it was amazing to see, and really glad that we picked her up. We've made some really good calls in our list management, I have to say, since we've entered the competition, in my opinion.
yes,
And she's definitely one of them.
yeah, because she's 18, I think. I'm just trying to find, but yeah, she's 18 or 19. I was just trying to find her profile, but my iPad is struggling today. But so you think we've talked about this, I think, before, that now this generation of 18, 19-year-olds that are coming through, they were like, 10, 11 years old when the AFLW started. So we're starting to get that generation of players that were still before their teen years, seeing the pathway open up for them. And then the next generation is going to be, as I mentioned last week for your daughter, like, the girls that grow up only knowing that AFLW exists. But these girls are the ones that kind of, as they got to an age where they could consider playing some footy going into their teen years, like they've had 7-8 years of playing football with a guaranteed pathway to the top if they want to get there. And players like Goody and Piper Window, who was quieter, but she actually had some good tackle numbers and stuff. It was just probably not as noticeable as Shanae was, just because of the way that Shanae played. But I thought Piper's numbers were actually okay, considering she only had 6 disposals. I mean,
obviously a different role, but Piper Window led us for tackles.
Yes, yes.
So from a defensive point of view, if you're stat leading for your team, you're obviously doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have anything? Yeah, overall, I guess just to go back to just in general in the game and close off on it. It does suck to lose the showdown. But I am, after the game, I was quite content afterwards, which is rare to have that feeling in a showdown. But I think you and I have both, and it's probably good to just repeatedly touch on this. And I think we've done a good service in talking about it. It is just the development. This is a new league still. We're 3 seasons in. We're coming in and having to develop against sides that are established. It's not like the sides that came in and had success straight away was because there was nothing to battle against previous. We're now we're part of the last 4 or 5 teams that came in back 3 years ago against established sides. We're having to develop on the run. And as you said about list management, we do have an ethos that we're going to build a squad that's going to be contending in 2 to, hopefully sooner, but, probably 2 to 3 years. They're wanting to build, like, once these girls are all, this youthful cropper, 23, 24, 25, contending, there's a clear pathway and a map that list management is doing, and they're sticking to it, but developing as they go and hoping to get the results. And, we came as close as we have to a showdown win. And again, it's been 60 points to 30 points to 15 points or whatever it was. Was 15 points, I think. 14 points maybe. But neither here nor there. It was, we closed the gap. So I was quite content after the game this morning. Actually, it started it was wild to have an AFL, like, there's a lot of Ports games last year for me were on at like 10 o'clock at night for me, which is really good for the AFLW games. Last night's game being a night game, I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, I got to do the 2:30 thing again. But no, I did it. That's the last time I'll have to do it for a while. So.
And because they don't play time on, like, it really starts and then it's done. It goes really quickly.
That is a nice aspect to it. I did enjoy the fact that I actually just stayed awake after that, because I did sleep before the game, thankfully. But yeah, I was quite content after the game, and really, really kind of pleased with the effort. And when you have, a star have a debut, or like Goody have a debut like she did, and we'll get to a couple of other players. I've got a few others that I want to mention, but they're in my Player of the Year vote, so I figured we'd get to them there. Yeah. Did you have anything else in general in the game before we do our votes? And
just a similar vibe to what you were just saying. There is that transition between shiny new toy and really getting the job done. Like
Hmm.
we're still in, yeah, I don't know if you could call it a honeymoon period, but there is a time where, you know, the perceptions will change and we really need to be showing some results. Last night was a step in the right direction, but yeah, we still want to be sitting on the positive side of the ledger, and um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the season unfolds from here. It's a decent starting point, again, in comparison to the years that have come before us. The other thing that I would say is it's great to see that in the AFL Women's Comp, they actually used the last possession out of bounds, last touch out of bounds
Hmm.
rule, because yeah, we all know how much it makes sense. And I forgot that they did, and then yeah, it obviously was adjudicated that way last night, and I was very happily surprised because I love that rule for the
Yeah.
simplicity.
It was
Um,
a little bit. I kept on forgetting that it's a thing, and then the kick would
mm,
like, so it's a little bit of an adjustment in your brain, especially when you're watching a game in the middle of the night and trying to. But yeah, I do love that. It keeps the game moving and kind of adds changes the way you have to play a little bit, just a little bit when you're playing out the wings. You can't
mm,
have that as a guaranteed stoppage or anything like that. And
yeah, but it just simplifies everything as well, which we've
yeah,
we've spoken about a few times in regards to the men's competition.
hmm
It's just frustratingly simple fix for some of the issues that we face in the men's competition. But
yeah,
yeah. So really, yeah, really enjoyed that
yeah.
aspect from last night.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I enjoyed it as well. All right, so we'll do player of the year votes to close out because I know we'll talk about a couple more players here. Did you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm ready to
we
go.
don't actually have a week to week order like we had with the men's this year. So I was just
Yeah,
like,
well, we're
I'll
kicking
just
it off, so
yeah. So I'll let you go first and kick off our player of the year voting for our FLW side in 2024.
yeah, sure. So I guess a couple of honorable mentions. One of them was going to be Piper Window for her stat leading effort in the tackle regard. Obviously, yeah, only had the 6 disposals, but like I said, she's led a stat, and a
Hmm.
pretty important stat. So great effort on debut. And then Wendland had a lot of great moments, I thought, in the game, Caitlin Wendland. But my one vote, I wanted to kick off. Well, one vote goes to our number one Guernsey, the captain in Janelle Cuthbertson. Uh, just her work in defense. She had 9 disposals and all of them were intercept possessions, 5 of which were contested. She had 5 rebound 50s, 211 meters gained, 4 marks, 5 1%ers, and 3 tackles. So in her first game as captain, yeah, you wanted to touch on the defense in the review. Yeah, I thought she led really well from the front for our defense, and um, yeah, discounting the disposal stat line, which can obviously, yeah, create a bias. I thought she played her role fairly well in defence, and deserved a single vote from mine. My 2 votes goes to Ash Saint. You mentioned she got moved around the field a bit. And she ended up with the 15 disposals, 7 of which were contested, which led to 5 score involvements. She kicked the 1 goal 2, so had a couple of more score involvements on top of those 3. Um, 2 inside 50s. Again, she's working up the ground and 241 meters gained. So she was, yeah, trying her darndest to influence the game in her own right against her old side as well. Um, 3 votes goes to Abby Dowrick. 14 disposals, 10 of which were contested, which isn't really that surprising.
Yeah.
1 goal 1 for herself, 287 meters gained, 5 tackles, which is a great effort, and 2 of those were inside 50. So again, that forward half pressure is really important. My 4 votes goes to Shanae Goody. We touched on her obviously before, the 15 disposals, 8 of which were contested, and her disposal efficiency, which I mentioned before, 73.3%. 423 meters gained. So yeah, where a lot of these people were the 150s to 250s, she elevated herself above that by far. Four
Hmm.
score involvements for her, 4 tackles and 3 marks. So a great debut from her, and look forward to how the rest of her season plays out. And my best on ground 5 votes goes to Sachi Syme. She had 18 disposals, 13 of those were contested, which is ridiculous. 330 meters gained. She had 6 clearances, and one of those were from the center. So yeah, when in a game where we're losing clearance, she put her head above the rest in that regard for us. 3 inside 50s and 3 rebound 50s, just really working hard both ways. 6 tackles herself, and 2 of those were inside 50. And she also had the 3 marks. Just before I hand over to you, obviously the final siren went, and both teams congregated together for the presentations, and then they walked off. And while, again, that shiny new toy nature of the fact that we've got a women's team and it's fairly fresh and new, and there's a lot of young women to be inspired on the sidelines, and everyone's kind of taking photos, and, people are smiling to fans in the stand and stuff. She looked absolutely fucking pissed that we lost that game. And I loved that because it showed how much, it means to someone like her. She's obviously a competitive beast because, 13 contested possessions out of her 18. But yeah, I just wanted to note that it's obviously something that I only know because I was standing on that portion of the ground where they are walking off. But I just saw her in amongst the rest of our team, and she looked fucked off. She obviously really wanted to win that game, and she let her hurt, which will hold her in good stead because she's obviously fairly switched on. She's very, very talented. And I mentioned maybe last week that she had an interview earlier in the year, a press conference, sorry. And she's obviously wanting to take a bit more of a leadership role as she grows into AFLW. And that kind of epitomized it a little bit, just her distaste for losing.
Yeah, and that's good because we want to. You want this team to start having that, like, as they transition from being the developing side. At some point, it's like you've got to stop accepting losses as part of development. We like as fans, and once we sit back a day after the game, you do that. But and during the night, I wanted to beat him as well, and she had like an air of that throughout the game as well. Like she was
a bit of dog in her.
Yeah, knuckled in and focused, and that which again, just to make a note, like she's 20, which is, actually I don't even know if she's quite 20. I think I looked up last night because I was like, how old is she? Because I know she came in as a young player.
She was also part of that first intake.
She was,
draft intake.
Yeah, she was. She was like later down which as the draft happened, it was basically you could declare for state. So, where you get taken in the draft order is somewhat a little bit different.
Tempered.
Compared to a full national draft, of which the AFLW is going. But yeah, I think her development's been really, I was really, really impressed with the game. Notice her right from the off, she's involved and she stayed involved throughout the whole game, which was a hot contest and one that required a lot of gutting out, particularly in the defensive side of it. So yeah, I was really impressed with that. I'm glad you brought that up too, because obviously I didn't notice it watching the end of the game on TV. So it's good to kind of get that on the ground knowledge and to know that kind of attitude is within the side, because that's what we'll need in the next stage of development. My votes, we didn't Yahtzee as far as order, but we have the same players in there, which is interesting. And cool. even your, I almost had Wendland in there, but I changed him up probably an hour before we recorded. Just once I went through the stats, I was like, she's not quite there. But I was really impressed with her on debut, and I do put some stock in the fact that when you're debuting as well, I think that's really impressive. Yeah. But for my one vote, I went with Ash Saint. I thought, she had a really, really good game and found ways to impact the game, not just up forward. As we said, she kicked a goal, which was nice in her 50th game. And congrats to her for playing her 50th game as well, which in the AFLW, the amount of games they play, 50 games is a significant milestone to get to. But I was really impressed with her, like just her around the ground movement, and I'm really kind of enjoying the 1-2 duo of her and Gemma, the way they move around the ground, because they both, I think you mentioned Ash had 5 score involvements. I actually don't know where Gemma ended up at, but I know in the commentary they mentioned at one point that both of them were on. She ended up with 4. I think at one point they mentioned in the commentary that both were on 4, and I think it was when they were having a little 1-2 handball together. So it was just kind of like, they're a nice partnership. But as far as and Gemma had a good game as well. She really throws her body around, which is scary in a positive way. I really like watching Gemma play, but Ash gets the vote there. My 2 votes, I gave Abby Dowrick. I could have easily been further up, but she again, really nice to see that she developed and came on really, really strong last year in her second year, and it seems like she's going to keep continuing with that. Again, she's a player that more and more as she develops, again, similar to how I was talking about Sinead Goody and just looking like a football player. She just looks
like a footballer.
Yeah. Love to running into a goal and kicking it with authority and a nice celly afterwards as well. Love the flex. So we're really lucky to have picked her up the way we have, and she's really like flourishing with every year and every preseason she gets under her belt now. My 3 votes I gave to Janelle Cuthbertson. I thought, considering there's a pressure and how you deal with it is kind of defines your performance, but there is a pressure going out with a number 1 on your back at Port Adelaide, and for her first game as well in a showdown, like you couldn't ask the amount of pressure intakes that are coming in on kind of building that pressure on you. I thought she handled it really well. She kind of rose to the number that's on her back, as well as obviously the Guernsey design on the front being the pylons. And then, as just her game was really good as well, as you mentioned, the stats. Just her, I think, like all of her marks I feel like all of them were contested. Like as she was, I can't actually recall them all now in my mind, but it felt like everything that she was doing was under quite heavy pressure, and she took some hits and bounced back up and took them well. So, I was really impressed with her effort, and she led from the front, from the back, but it's captain's performance, and that's what we want with the people that wear the number 1 at Port Adelaide, is just lead by example. So, my last 2 votes are the same as yours, though. But give Sinead. I almost gave Sinead my best on just for the fact it was a debut, but I just couldn't go past Saatchi for best on just with how she has developed, and again, she's pretty young as well in the side, and but Sinead Goody's debut was something to behold, and if Saatchi hadn't had such a good game from the start, and even now you telling me that how she looked after the game makes me even more impressed that she kind of took that attitude into the game. And if that's the standards they're starting to set for themselves and as a group, it's really positive to see that they now want to be pissed off at losing games rather than, the first year or 2 was just, this is accepting a part of development. But that makes me even more strong in giving her the 5 votes. So Sinead with 4, Saatchi with 5. So that gives Saatchi early lead in our Player of the Year voting for the Lady Pear. Just a brief note, because we won't get the chance to preview before they play again. They're playing in Melbourne this week. Interesting developments around that, with the fact that the AFL, weird set of circumstances. The Western Bulldogs wanted to have the games a day apart from each other.
Had a big night set up at Whitten Oval.
And Sydney wanted the Friday night game, and the AFL went, okay, so you want things that would work for both of you? We're going to do the opposite. Don't understand the fucking league sometimes and how the decision making happens, but whatever. The AFLW and the AFL have come together and made it work. I think it still sucks that they didn't get to do what they wanted to do at Whitten Oval. Port ladies are playing the Western Bulldogs this Friday. Now is the curtain raiser for the Western Bulldogs Hawthorn elimination final it's at the MCG.
It is at the G.
So a cool occasion.
Huge round for an AFLW match, but it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
The Western Bulldogs got their asses handed to them by GWS on the weekend as well. Just an opposition watch, I think it was 72-9. GWS scored the fastest goal in AFLW history to this point as well. So the Dogs are one of those teams we should be looking to go over and beat. We are developing as well, but the Dogs have kind of gone through some changes. It's Kirsty Lamb's first game against her old side as well. This is the kind of game that now, as we look going forward. We want to be winning this one. Your note on the ground is important. Like, but both teams are playing on the same ground. Like, it's not like the Western Bulldogs have any real experience playing on that ground either. So
No.
Hopefully some of that youthful exuberance and some of those positives we got out of that game. They're not the Western Bulldogs are not one of the teams that a few are picking for finishing bottom of the table this year. So that's the Crows are perennial contenders for the flag. We had a close game against them, which is important. If we're coming up against a side that a lot of people are picking and their form on the weekend showed that they may not be that good, no disrespect to them, but this is the kind of team we want to start banking some wins and maybe be fighting for the 8 this year. These are the kind of results we need to go over and get. So that's my expectation for it. I think that's about it for that. Look forward to it. Hopefully watching, recovering from a successful night at Adelaide Oval.
Yes, exactly.
Segue win. Completely defeats the purpose of doing that when you mention it on air, but I like to I like to enjoy those. But yes, we now will get into the preview of a massive night at Adelaide Oval coming on Thursday night, 7:10 p.m. versus Geelong. I can't believe we're entering our fourth matchup in the qualifying final. Like, it's not like it's just the fourth finals matchup. Obviously, there was a fifth one. Won't talk about it.
Fuck that one.
Yeah, but the fact that we've had 4 matchups now, with this game included, at this specific point of finals, like, it's not like it's like we played a elimination final against them at one point and a semi-final.
Well, and they've all been at our home ground too.
They have, yeah. And I've been at all of them as well. Including this one upcoming as well. And they've all been wins so far. So a lot of things to look at there, which is nice. Whether it be 2004, which episode is coming. Obviously with travel planning, that has delayed some of my editing there, but that is coming for the Patreon as well. 2004 won by a comfortable 55-point win. 2020, a real good dogged defensive effort to beat them in a lower scoring game, which obviously the COVID year there was lower 16-minute quarters and all that stuff. It was still a lower scoring game and a nice defensive effort. I still recall standing up probably 15 beers deep at this point when Tom Jonas took a big mark towards the end and just yelling, "That's my fucking captain," repeatedly. And then obviously a year later in 2021, we had a more comfortable qualifying final win. I think Orazio Fantasia had 4 goals in that one, and
dominant night.
And Sam Powell-Pepper came on as a sub and had a nice last quarter.
2 goals as a sub.
So a lot's changed since then. Lots changed for both sides in the squad makeup. Like a couple of those players we mentioned, obviously Powell-Pepper's become a more integral part, though won't unfortunately be available in this one. Orazio Fantasia not a Port player anymore, and Geelong had kind of gone through a mini rebuild on the run to be contenders again. They just won't fucking die. It's ridiculous.
No signs of a good club, and just maybe a conversation for another time about where your perceptions lie in regards to a successful or a strong club.
Yes, yeah. No, that would be an interesting one to
case study.
They very much are, because they've returned to the well regularly and had success. Even if some might think they could have won one more in the last 10 years, just winning one is they've
please.
I figure if you're winning at least one premiership every decade, you're doing okay. So, and they've done that for the last 3. So, just on their front, they've got it's interesting injury list, as I almost tongue-tie myself, because they've got a couple of season enders, but a lot of their guys are tests and probably will play. They subbed Tom Stewart out of their dominating win against West Coast at halftime with he had a bit tight hamstring, but all the indications immediately after the game are he's going to be fine in 2 weeks. Same with Lawson Humphreys, which is one of a young gun. I think he played the second back half of the season, and has been proven to be a nice little steal and find for them. He was a little bit sore after the game, but he just had ice on his calf, I think, and was wandering around in good spirits with the team after. I was watching that game and just left it on afterwards for their, a lot of chat to Tom Hawkins and Zach Tui after the game. So I was watching them, kind of their body language, and yeah, both those Stewart and Humphreys looked pretty comfortable and happy that they'd be playing. So yeah, they are listed as a test, but I'd expect them to be playing. Sam De Koning as well. I'd expect him to be playing. He's listed as a test. Tom, it is interesting though, looking even back to, and I know you've got a few more notes on the squad makeup from back when we played them in that great game at GMHBA earlier in the season. But Tom Hawkins, who did play that game, is returning from injury, but isn't likely to play just with how their team is looking. He may not play a game for them again at this point. But yeah, otherwise, before we get into just running through the lines, I know you mentioned off air that you had kind of had the squads from our last match up to now, and just some of the points of difference to them.
Yeah, and yeah. While I've said that, yeah, it is a lot of visual information to take in, like in front of me. Yeah, but I mean, gee whiz, there has been a few changes. I mean, like you said, Tom Hawkins was playing for them at that point in time. Brandon Parfitt. They didn't have Zach Tui, Jack Bowes, and Tanner Bruin, which I think has been noted kind of on that side of the fence in regards to this upcoming game.
Dangerfield play last time? I don't think he did.
Dangerfield did not play last time, so yeah, a bit of a key out there.
He's been in pretty good form too.
Yeah, he's had a few quintessential Dangerfield games, but the problem that they have at the moment is without Hawkins there, they have had to rotate Dangerfield forward a lot more, and he has been a bit of that mid forward in particularly the latter stages of his career, but I think he's had to spend more time forward.
I remember him kicking the winner down at Geelong when I was there in 2017. Yeah.
I think that was the year, the Charlie Dixon shot clock fiasco.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I was there.
I was there. Yeah, funny. Reece Stanley, it was in, then out, and then he's come back in recent times. But then looking at our side of the fence, Radaglia was playing back. Obviously, Houston and Farrell played that game. They won't be there. Josh Sin did play that game. So, yeah, an interesting note to make. Burton played that game. Ryan Burton played that game. We had Vizentini and Ruck, and we fantastically reviewed the fact that he actively got someone subbed out of the game, and now we're playing with a Jordan Sweet who's just at the top of his game. So some interesting Todd Marshall was in the side at that point in time against Geelong earlier in the year. Will he play? Won't he play? It's a really interesting, just some really interesting selection conversations that have come out of the last couple of rounds of the home and away season, and in regards to how we shape up. There's been a lot of interesting conversations and a lot of interesting team ins floated. So I
guess we can start on looking at the back.
Yeah, for sure. Let's go for it.
I mean, the back line's probably the most intriguing part of it because of obviously the runoff halfback, the guys like Dan Houston, as you mentioned, and Kane Farrell being out for different reasons, but their seasons are done at this point for both of those reasons. The other one, I think Logan Evans wasn't even on our side the last time we played Geelong, I don't think. So that's another one as well.
This was in was it round 9?
Yeah.
So our outs for that game were Lockie Jones as well. Jace Burgoyne was out of the side, and Connor Rosie as well didn't play in that round 9 match. So,
so as much as you can point to, maybe Geelong were unlucky because they were missing a few players, we were missing a few key players as well. So, Rosie certainly, because he was missing because we just played the Showdown the week before and all that fiasco that we had with mismanaging his
doomsday after that Showdown loss too, expecting another loss to come straight after it.
Yes, we were, but it was a really impressive win, which is a good boon. But there is a lot of changes that have happened, and certainly just starting with the back line. We've been playing the last 6-7 weeks now. I'm trying to think actually how long it's been with, Asava Radaglia is not part of that back line. Obviously Miles Bergman. 5 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that Carlton game, which was the
Right.
start of
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
You won't win
Mhm.
another game for the rest of the season run.
Yeah. And we just went 5-0 instead.
Yeah.
Bergman obviously spending a lot more time back, and
Yeah, so he was still listed on a wing, and
Yeah.
that was the start of the whole quandary
Mhm.
in regards to where his best position lies. So yeah, the backline's probably the most, I guess, interesting third of the ground in a lot of people's eyes, in
Mhm.
particular how we shape up there. Um, so yeah, I don't know where you want to start in regards to that third matchups versus just magnets selections.
Yeah, because I don't know. I'm trying to recall back to what we did with Jeremy Cameron because he does float around a little bit, and
Yeah.
we don't want to get sucked into letting him dictate positioning. Because they will try to disrupt what we do as far as the intercept marking game and what Alir wanting to be freer sometimes, and certainly he's not alone. Like we've got a lot of guys that are helping him out in that front. But who would you be? I guess it depends if he is down back, you put someone on him. If he moves up the field, you kind of just
Yeah, I'm quite comfortable with Bergman having that job
yeah,
because he's done it before, and
yeah,
he was on the wing for that game in round 9. So
hmm
I remember in our review we were commenting on the fact that it seemed like a bit more of a team effort. It
yeah,
was just really being conscientious of handing him over
hmm
to someone else wherever he was at the time. Um, but with the lack of Hawkins now, and look, I really don't know how you can pick a Tom Hawkins, even if he is technically fit. He's missed that much football, and it was a foot injury.
hmm
So yeah, Cameron is obviously floating a bit more forward in that absence. So with Miles Bergman just being in that area anyway and having done those jobs on him before, I'm quite comfortable with that matchup being the predominant matchup for those for Jeremy Cameron.
yeah,
Alir might have a bit more room to move because I probably expect Zerk Thatcher to line up against Shannon Neal if Shannon Neal is
hmm
in fact picked, which I expect because he's had a fairly decent run at it for Geelong
hmm
as a young player. So it could be a bit of Bergman and Alir, although those are two defensemen. So how our team shapes up if Cameron does go up the field, whether they just go Bergman chase him
hmm
and then Jace Burgoyne maybe substituting back if that's the case from the wing.
yeah,
That would probably be a scenario I would expect to find on Thursday night. Yeah.
yeah. And then obviously Ollie Henry's been someone who's been pretty developing well down there for them as well as another taller target set shot. He had a decent game against West Coast. Not that West Coast is any, they kind of put the queue in the right, although they did fight back and at least help us out in the hypothetical percentage. It was funny I was watching that Geelong West Coast game. I've never been more invested in a game that's floating at around 100-point deficit because every time because they kept because at that time we hadn't won our game.
Oh, the light ladder's going crazy.
Yeah, so they're keeping an eye on the percentage, and they're thinking that I thought they'd clear our percentage, and we'd have to. And as it turned out, it didn't matter. We won't beat Freo anyway. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. It was fascinating for my own mentality of watching football to watch a 100-point win with such investment. Every time West Coast scored, I was like, yes.
Yeah. So we've obviously got Burton and Lockie Jones in.
Mm-hmm.
Logan Evans, like you said, has been drafted, done a fantastic job. I would imagine they'd probably want someone a bit more accountable on Ollie Henry, and
Mm-hmm.
he is a fairly quick, fleet-footed type player.
Jones would be interesting one because he has the pace to go with him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're going into matchups, but ultimately we've got a spot to fill. A lot of people have been throwing up. There's been a lot of interesting conversation. My opinion would probably be to be cautious of jumping at shadows.
Mm-hmm.
Like we said last week, as important as Houston and Farrell are, we won we won last week's game without Houston for a whole match and without Farrell for half of that game.
Yeah.
We actually drew ahead without Farrell in the side. So I think it's important. And then in our review, we both probably kind of agreed that as important as they are, we have the depth to cover them, and they're probably not the most integral parts of our lineup or our structure.
Yeah, they're just
that's why
what Houston can do is like a cherry on top. It does make it is a point of difference, but as far as
they elevate themselves,
as far as actual just once you have to have the discussion, it's just like it's a lot easier to talk about replacing Dan Houston, as much as it sucks. Like I think hopefully people listening understand what we're trying to say. Replacing
really
replacing Dan Houston. Yeah, replacing Dan Houston is easier than, and knock on wood, replacing Alir. Like there's just certain players that you really
exactly what we said last week. Or you said, so in that regard, we're not replacing two magnets. Like I think, it has been a bit of like, we're without Houston, and we have already replaced one of them. Like Ryan Burton, we both agreed he played the second half of the Showdown predominantly when Lockie Jones went off, and then he was there for the whole game against Freo and played a great game in both of our opinions. So that's less of a concern for me. My initial reaction was to probably bring a player like Josh Sinn in, and then everyone said, we've got Williams. DBJ rotated back last week in the Fremantle game.
Which that's always an interesting Twitter discussion when people bring the DBJ discussion's been quite hot, which I respect all opinions.
It does have its merit for sure.
He was an All-Australian there a few years ago.
And I think it was mentioned earlier in the year on our show, like without the pressure of leadership or a leadership role, he seems to be in a better mental space, in my opinion.
Yeah, body language has been good with him most of the year.
Yeah, and there was a lot of defensive efforts last week that alluded to the fact that if he was to play a whole game in that role, he would be able to hold up. We obviously have to fill that role for the whole final series as far as that may go. So we kind of need to invest in someone who's probably going to be in that spot for hopefully 3 finals. So, and I stress hopefully, because there's been a lot of grand final chat. Don't know if I like it. And again, it has been a lot of hopefully grand final chat, but a lot of grand final chat nonetheless, which first things first, really. But we do have to project, like we got a spot to fill, and we hopefully have to have that player there for 3 finals. Now, if it was just one, I'm happy to put DBJ there, particularly because he did show in a half of football on against Freo that he is still quite capable. He's a senior leader. He's got those runs on the board. You don't just forget how to be a defensive player, or you don't forget the structure that our team plays within just because you've been moved forward. The problem is that he is a number 1 pressure player and number 1 goal involvement player up forward. Are they going to want to take that out, and do they think they can cover that? I'm not really that sure. So while I was a big advocate for Josh Sinn last week, when you point to the fact that he's fairly inexperienced, Logan Evans is quite inexperienced, Miles Bergman, for as talented as he is fairly inexperienced still. Do you want to fill your back line with that certain level of inexperience and expose them in a way? Although they have all played, well, Evans and Bergman in particular, fantastic, particularly second halves of the seasons. Do you want to throw in a Josh Sinn in there based on his potential? And I'm glad I'm not a selector, and I don't really want to sit on the fence. But when you just go, and because I've seen a lot of rosy chat, I understand it.
Yeah, people bringing up the North Adelaide grand final team and him listed at halfback, stuff like that.
And I get it that they're boiling it down to the fact that Kane Farrell, quick on his feet, has a big kick and a decent decent accuracy, like efficiency, I should say.
Mm.
And I understand you're trying to exchange or match attribute for attribute. In my opinion, this game is going to be won in the midfield. Again, I said that about the Showdown, and it's a very obvious notion, but the depth in our midfield is that good that can purely take the game away from Geelong, in my opinion, just on that third. So does it render how we make up our defense line, does it render that as important as what some people are making it out to be? Again, I don't think we should jump at shadows.
Mm.
I don't want to sit on the fence, but I don't really know what the best avenue is, because again, we just have to fill one spot. More than comfortable with Ryan Burton being there, and hopefully that the carrot of finals being dangled keeps his consistency at a high level.
Yeah.
So you've got Ryan Burton, who's senior, Alir, who's senior. Zerk Thatcher, I wouldn't say he's senior, but he's more senior than a Logan Evans and a Miles Bergman, probably, and he spent more time in defense across his career, and he is a bit older than them. So there is that balance, but I'm just not sure who fits the bill to even out that youthful exuberance, but also experience. Like who's going to be the kind of link between that to complete our defense. And then Lockie Jones is obviously there as well, who I would suspect is probably going to do a job. So he's going to be required. He has all those attributes that Kane Farrell has: a long kick, speed. But I still think that because Geelong, for their tall forward woes in regards to Hawkins not being there, their small forwards are quite impactful. With Stengel close, Henry, as you mentioned, and then Grind Myers with his link-up ability. Someone like Jones probably have his hands full there in that regard. So my gut tells me that the selectors probably won't want to rock the boat with moving DBJ back for a whole final series, because they would be projecting for a whole final series. That's what we want. That's what we're aiming for. They can't just go for a quick fix. And you've gotten yourself into second place with this good chance at the run through finals. I think that's the most important part. Yeah. DBJ's and you mentioned his stats as far as where he leads the team playing as a forward. So you're not going to completely. You're not. It would be. I would be like I'm very much against it, moving DBJ unless we get hit with again, knock on wood, like many more injuries, and we just have to, pull that lever. But otherwise, I'm just like, it's been interesting watching the DBJ discussions. And certainly I've been watching them with interest on Twitter, and certainly not criticizing. But for me, it's just like that was never in consideration. I'm just looking at the team, like the lineup from Freo, and I'm seeing, all right, Kane Farrell was the one that's gone out. Burton was listed as interchange. Oh, that's the one for me. And then it is, do you bring Josh Sin in as an option as well, depending on how the game goes? Do you want to have that run and be able to have him on the bench and figure it out? But otherwise, it's just like, for me, it's just throw Ryan Burton in there. He played well last week. We both agree with that, and his pressure numbers are really good. If he can bring that same application and some decent disposal efficiency, then that's doing most of the job that Kane Farrell was doing. And because we're not even talking about replacing Dan Houston, because we've already done that for a week. So we're talking about now replacing Kane Farrell. Right. And again, I watch Moneyball this week. I fucking love that movie. And it's like, we're not trying to replace Giambi. We're trying to replace what he brings to the team. So that's what Ryan Burton's the one that brings those numbers and those figures to the side. So as much as a replacement can. And again, we're playing with a team that Logan Evans has just shown so much growth game to game, really. And he's having 23 kicks with 600 meters gain on the weekend. So he took some of that mantle already last week. Alongside, it was he and Ryan Burton that were the two most meters gained players for us against Freo. So they kind of have already done this a little bit last week. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
we've got to try something. That just seems the most logical thing to try. And then not that you want, we have this. This isn't the end of our season this week, regardless of how it goes. Now we want to get the selection right because we want to give ourselves the best chance at home finals through to, and only having to play 3 games for a potential grand final. But that just, for me, that's the logical move. Not even sitting on the fence really. It's just like I'm just looking at the team sheet the way it was against Freo and just throw Ryan Burton in for Kane Farrell and see how it goes. And I have
suss out the interchange,
and suss out that last player picked.
So obviously Sin was withheld as an emergency. So he didn't play SANFL in the last home and away game for the Magpies, which is a little unfortunate. May work against him, may not, because obviously, you train for a whole season. They would be doing match sim and all that shit at training anyway. But then going back to the SANFL Showdown, Josh Sin was our second best disposal winner behind Will Lorenz, funnily enough. And he's one that's also been floated. Again, do you want to expose someone like that who I think plays more of a wing role to finals level football with a sub moment as his only AFL exposure? So then, Sin was second best on ground in the SANFL Showdown. 16 kicks, 7 handballs, 7 marks, 5 tackles, 9 rebound 50s, which is that kind of realm. Just if I, on the fly, I could quickly go back one more round to see if he played, and some other aficionados of the SANFL would probably already know some of this stuff. So the week before against Woodville West Torrens, before the SANFL Showdown, this is, you got Hugh Jackson, again, another midfielder, being our leading disposal winner. Josh Sin, a bit more down the list in terms of disposals, 16 disposals, 3 marks. He had the 3 rebound 50s, so come a bit harder. Dylan Williams did play the last 2 SANFL rounds, but he was in the realm of 11 to 15 disposals, and some people have made the note that he's just probably a touch off the pace for that type of role. And I don't really, he performed magnificently well last year, so, and he was the same in terms of his speed, so it's that money ball. What do you bring as an aggregate in your defensive third?
For me, I'm very much on Sin. I like him. I like the way he carried himself. Got a bit of swagger.
And that game against Woodville West Torrens, Williams, it's the only game where Williams had more disposals than Sin, and it was only 2. So I think we're both in agreement that Sin looks the most likely if you're going at it where you don't want to touch the lines that have got us in the spot that we're in, like the point that you made just before. Like we're in second spot, and DBJ had featured heavily in the forward line. He's clearly made an impact in the forward line. Connor Rosie, as our skipper, has clearly made an impact in the midfield, particularly when he's been injury-free. And the depth in our midfield, like I said, is what's going to win us the game. So keep it simple. Don't jump at shadows, in my opinion. And put Sin on the bench, like you said, because Burton was on the bench, and then he came onto the field on paper way through that Freo game.
I'm pretty happy with that. And often what Rosie does is go, like, he ends up being one of the link-up players starting that run. All of them do, but he often is, I can just picture him in my mind doing like a quick video in my head just of all the moments I can remember Rosie running off halfback. Anyway, even just as a help.
When we do the player of the year votes, like Zach Butters, Connor Rosie, players like that, they always generally do have the healthy number of rebound 50s anyway. So they're around the vicinity. If the ball's down there, they're in the vicinity anyway. And it's not like Farrell and then to another extent Houston are highly accountable, which we've commented on before.
But again, last week I noted that the leader in defensive half pressure acts was Ryan Burton. So if he keeps bringing that application, which at this time of the year, it's not hard to get players motivated. It's not like we're talking the dog days of winter or anything like that, when you're just slogging through a game in winter weather, and finals are 2-3 months away. We're in finals now, so the level of motivation and application shouldn't be an issue. So, and what I saw from Burton last week, I have no doubt that I think he's just might be just in the right. We might just be in the right frame of mind for both of us to have some fun again with Ryan Burton. So, you mentioned the midfield battle is going to be key, and real key was the fact that Connor Rosie didn't play the last time we played him, and we still had a pretty good win. They didn't have Dangerfield either, so it is kind of both teams coming in as far as the engine rooms, both kind of ticking as good as they could. Like we've got just multiple players in good form. Zach Butters is everyone. Our midfield's found their form in the back half of the season. You go through the whole list. Butters obviously is showdown performance.
In Brownlow form.
I think Ollie Wines is in. I think for what he's bringing to the team is in the best form of his career, which is weird to say because he's not going to be anywhere near winning the Brownlow. And maybe I loved his 2021 year, and maybe I'm being a little bit recency bias, but just the way that way they're operating, what the sacrifice he's made to his game, but that has helped elevate his game to allow for the likes of Rosie and Butters to do what they do, and Jason Horne-Francis and then Willem Drew as well. Like, yeah, they're just operating at such a high level. So we're in the best spot we could possibly be going into this game as far as their midfield group. They're all fit. Knock on wood that stays the way it is. And we run really, really deep there. It's like having that early 2000s Australian batting lineup when you look through and you just went, that guy's a Hall of Famer, that guy's a Hall of Famer, that guy's a Hall of Famer. And it's just like you get down to the sixth spot and it's just like you get through the first five. And it's like,
we got a few early wickets, but we're coming up against.
And then Adam Gilchrist comes out and smacks it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's going to be a really intriguing midfield battle. It'd be interesting to see what we do if we try to run with anyone. I think because the main guy you've got to worry about is Dangerfield when he's up, but they've got some good young players that have come through as well. But it is still just Patrick Dangerfield for me. He's the worry. He's the game breaking player. I don't like. Maybe I'm being really, really overly confident, but we do on paper have the better midfield. It is all about how you do it on the day. But I don't know how you see it. The more I looked at it today as I was waiting to start recording, I was just like, fuck, I love where we're at in this position on the field. This is usually when everything crashes apart for me as a Port fan, is when I'm this confident. But
I mean, we both had to sit through that 2021 preliminary final.
Yeah.
Which we'd rather forget. But it doesn't all go the way that you think it is. But we've commented on the attitudes that we're seeing in regards to the team balance, the team play. Like, you've got how they lined up against West Coast: Mitch Duncan, Tom Atkins, and Ollie Dempsey in the centre line, and then their followers are Reece Stanley, Dangerfield, and Tom Stewart, which is funny because everyone's noted that Tom Stewart floats in and out. Yeah,
Ollie Dempsey, who just won the Rising Star Award, which I just to touch on it because I think it was a funny moment. I didn't watch it live, but I just put it on the other morning while I was doing some work just to see it. And Dempsey thanked Harley Reid for
tribunal.
Thanked the tribunal. Yeah, good sense of humour there. But good young player in there. Anyway, continue. I thought I'd just note that for anyone listening who hasn't put two and two together.
Very humorous.
But that he is a Rising Star winner for this year as well. In there, so
I was thinking about that thing, the whole do we do a job earlier today, and it's interesting because earlier in the season we have called for Willem Drew to do a job, but then we found that him not doing a job opens another avenue for him to kind of impact in a different way, and due to the depth of our midfield. He's been somewhat defensive, but not hyper defensive, and then allowed the dynamic players to flourish in their own right, but also being involved in his own right. But then you look at the game like versus Carlton, where he does a job on Cripps, who is one of those bigger bodied midfielders, and he absolutely quelled his influence, kept Cripps to 3 score involvements or something like that. So
Caleb Sarong just last weekend as well.
Yeah. Who isn't as much of a big-bodied midfielder, but he is an accumulator, and he does do a lot of damage for his side. So, I think the player that you would pick, I would agree, would be Dangerfield, but it's just how much time he spends there. So, in saying that, is it if he's there, do a job? If he's forward, we'll keep to our more dynamic structure where you're still there, Willem Drew this is, but you're edging an opponent out so that, your JHF or your Zach Butters can split the pack and get that clearance away, or so it may just be a horse of course is like a situational thing.
You just want to
Dangerfield's in the area, do a job on him. That'll be a really interesting watch.
Yeah.
Just for the fact that Dangerfield does rotate, and he's probably the most likely and probably the only one you would worry about doing a job on.
Mm-hmm. I just really want to see him, like, just some attention around a stoppage if he's there, or, centre bounce, whatever it may be. Because you're looking, you're thinking in your mind all those moments you've seen Patrick Dangerfield just burst through, take the ball and burst out. And you just don't want to have too much of that. He'll get his moments. It's kind of like, guys are going to get their shots off in games, and it's kind of like what we talked about with Bontempelli before that game.
Yes.
There's like a path, and I don't know what the path. I didn't actually think about it too much, so I can't think of it. But we talked about a path for Bontempelli. If we can keep him, below 25 disposals and 2 goals, then we've probably done a pretty good job. So maybe Dangerfield's like that. If we can keep him into like the lower end of the 20s in disposals and not have him do too much damage when he does rotate forward, then we've probably done. Then that's going a long way to winning, and so it's just
hopefully
checking.
He pings a hamstring early.
Yeah, and I mean, not that we
they are a bit touch and go this year, I would say.
Yeah,
Dangerfield's hammies.
Yeah, because I think that's what he missed the time for in the game that we played against him down in Geelong. It was a hamstring, and he's
because he still wants to explode like Dangerfield, so to speak, does. But
I think that's been his main worry for the last 4 or 5 years. Really, has been his hamstrings. I think that's every time he misses time, I almost think it's always hamstring.
Makes sense.
That is a player he is as well. But I'm pretty confident with that midfield. Like, as long as the application's there and we're not going to be overawed by the occasion or anything like that. We have a lot of our players have played finals and played a few of them at this point. Even HORNE-FRANCIS, very young in his career, but he did play a couple of finals with us last year. So there's none of these guys, not many of them. Like Logan Evans, of course, is playing his first finals, but he's shown already that he's not really overawed by any occasion. So seems to have a pretty good attitude about things. It was a good little interview on AFL 360 for the Rising Star.
It was a fantastic interview, yeah. And we've mentioned in our review shows recently that some of these games that we're playing in, the pressure ratings have been quite high for large portions of the game, which is the perfect tune-up. And players like Logan Evans have played in those games and have kept, for him specifically, kept his head fairly well. Very well, in fact.
Yeah, he's exceeding expectations in a lot of moments, kind of like his highlights package for his Rising Star for half a season was full of a lot of candy selling and little stiff arms and quite smooth operating. So, that brings us to the forward line to wrap up. It's again, I think you mentioned at the top some of the questions or just musings about whether Todd comes back in, because I think he is a test or he's available, but I think he is available actually. I still am quite, and I've talked before, I'm a big Todd Marshall fan, but I'm quite wary of bringing him in at the moment just because he's had so many question marks on him. Obviously, the fact he went out with a concussion most recently again, his ability to get through a game is a question mark. His ability to impact the game where we want up forward. He does do a lot of things that go unnoticed, so I will credit him for that, but we need him to be able to kick goals and be consistently present to present for an opportunity to kick a goal, like to take a mark, kick a goal. Just none of these things are things that he's filled me with much confidence with this year when he's been in the side, barring the Kangaroos game, which unfortunately isn't a great, isn't a great example
Yeah.
of your best footy. If you're, he had a great game against Kangaroos and took his opportunities and had some really good set shot kicking, but that's the only time I've really been impressed with him this year. Assuming Charlie Dixon, who was ill, he didn't go out with injury, but he's had, that's given. I mean, illness isn't a good way to rest, but he's had a few weeks of rest now with the bye as well. So hopefully Charlie, with the fact he has been in decent form in that forward line, him and Radaglia have provided an interesting 1-2 punch. And Georgiades being fit, I don't see a way for Todd to be in that forward line with those, because I think Asava stays forward. I hope he does, because again, you mentioned the 5-week run has been with Asava up forward. Yes, we want him to kick some more goals whenever he gets the opportunities, but as far as what he does with the pressure and tackling in the forward line, I'm really impressed with what he did. Like, that assist from the Logan Evans little highlight moment with the kick inboard, and Radaglia taking that tackle that you mentioned, getting spun 180 and getting the handball out.
That tackle.
Yeah. So Radaglia does provide some stuff there. Again, the 1-2 punch with Dixon I've found quite fun to watch myself. And Georgiades being back and looks fit enough last week. He didn't. He kicked a couple of goals he didn't get as much.
He looked good.
Yeah. So I just don't see any space for another tool coming into that forward line if all three of those guys are fit and raring to go. I don't know. It's not even a discussion for me, to be honest.
But it has been in discussion. Yeah. It's funny. It's just like, you're just farming for engagement, SEN, and the like because I've heard, is it Kim? And then even Brenton Sanderson, I think they interviewed him late last week, and I think they were both saying that they would bring Marshall in and keep Dixon out. And
have they watched Port Adelaide football in the last 5 weeks? Like, I know
for a fact that Kimbo does Power Nation on SEN. So the way I see it is that if you are bringing Marshall,
we're talking about Kim Dillon. I assume that's what
Kim Dillon.
I assume that's what you're talking about.
Unaware.
Which famously not a Port man, by the way. So,
well, I think he tipped us to win the premiership. I think.
Oh, did he? Okay.
It makes it sort of just so more boggling to the mind. But the way I see it is, if you're leaving Dixon out, you effectively make Asava Radaglia your Charlie Dixon. He'll have the two defenders laying off him. But further to that, Dixon has been kicking goals since his return to the side, whereas Marshall,
accuracy has been reasonable. Yeah,
accuracy has been reasonable, which we will die on that fucking hill. But Marshall has had many, many bites of the cherry, and objectively just hasn't been doing the job. He's been out of form and injured and concussed. You and I both love Todd Marshall and what he is capable of, his team first kind of nature, some of the intricate footy IQ stuff that he does perform at times. But again, I don't want to jump at shadows, because we've got a whole final series to play out, and the team balance has been fantastic since that Richmond game, in my opinion. Looking at Geelong's defence and how they lined up against West Coast, it reminds me of that Carlton game where they thought they could expose Carlton for height by putting Radaglia forward. Like, Geelong's defence is led by Mark Blixarves as their tallest, and they've got Tui, Henry, Kolajasny, Max Holmes, Zach Guthrie as the small to medium defenders around him. Pretty sure that Carlton game plan worked pretty well for us across the 4 quarters of that match. I see a similar thing in this regard. 2 behemoths in Dixon and Radaglia keeps them pretty fucking busy, but Radaglia more so is athletic enough to negate the negatives when the ball hits the ground. And then, Georgiades, who Ken has been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks that he's not a tall defender. He said, like, even midfielders are taller than George. He plays taller than what he is, but he's a medium forward. So again, athletic enough on the ground and in the air. And then we've got our small forwards, which led by Willie Rioli. DBJ, if he's up there, who's the number 1 goal involvement player for us and pressure forward. That's
probably the one question. Just to interject, what we do in that last.
Where you're going.
Yeah, because obviously Jed McEntee came in for our last minor round game, which obviously sent Twitter into a meltdown because what are we doing?
Yeah.
I feel bad for like I get the Jed McEntee discussion objectively as far as how does it, but he does do a lot of things, but
Kind of output,
how much that deserves a week in week out spot. I get the discussion. I feel bad for how people talk about him at times. Like,
again, you're supporting a club, and that involves 44 fucking players on the list. You can have your objections to having him in the team if you want to remain objective and constructive. But I've seen some chains of conversation which were fucking deplorable by Port Adelaide supporters, and some of which are Port Adelaide members. Like, this is a guy that you should be hoping has a fantastic game rather than shitting on him just for being selected. Like, I would agree that in my opinion, Frankie Evans and Quinton Narkle have had the better seasons. If we're just talking about those three, I think those Narkle and Evans have had the better seasons. But if Jed McEntee is going to be picked, I understand what he can bring if he plays a good to great game. So therefore, if he is picked,
think about Geelong last time we
that's
played
what
him.
I want. Yeah, and that's obviously why potentially he's going to get picked. Now, we know that that's worked. What I would say is Chris Scott's a very smart coach, and he has a good coaching group around him. Geelong, as we said at the top of this preview, they're a pretty successful club in terms of they're always showing up for finals. They're always making a push for a premiership. I would assume they would learn a lot out of that play in round 9. But it's worked for us, and we may go with it again. And if that's the case, I really hope Jed has a fucking great game and nails that role. Do I think that he necessarily deserves to be there over a Narkle? Because Frankie Evans was in the game against Freo. And probably not. If we're removing that job from Stewart, which may not come as easily because they're rotating Stewart through the midfield more as a result of that and what happened in the weeks after it, I believe that Narkle probably deserves to be there. But a player representing my club, I hope they fucking have a blinder, and I hope he contributes to a fucking win if he's picked. I just think, I think it gets me a little emotional seeing some of that feedback, which is, again, like our comments with Ken and some of the other contentious members of our football club, just how fucking personal, particularly Port supporters get in regards to their assessments. It kind of makes me sick a little bit.
Yeah, it's been similar. And just for a wider AFL thing, I've seen the same. Like Melbourne fans that suddenly thought Petrarca was just a terrible human. Even after he's come out and said,
"Don't be
don't
be so fickle. You're only working towards Kane Collins's assessment from what I perspective."
Yeah, but I can't remember if it's his partner. But the fact that his partner, wife, whatever it is, with Petrarca, was told he might not make it. It's just but people are just like, oh, he's all about himself. I'm like, the dude almost fucking.
But it's all conjecture. Yeah. You don't know that those things have actually been said.
Yeah.
About the brand stuff.
Crows fans were pretty nasty in the wake of the showdown with some of their.
Oh my God. I've seen a lot of Crows Twitter recently, and fuck me. If I was a supporter of that club, I'd be fucking disgusted with some of the assessments of particular players and personal feedback.
Long-term players as well, and even Jordan Dawson became persona non grata for a couple of days because he was towing the company line. It's just you can be objective and say, I don't think Rory Laird should have said that, but you don't have to be like, oh, get this cunt out of my club. He's a terrible human being because he had. And what he's actually doing is just saying this is the stand. Whether you agree with it or not, they're just saying this is the standards of our football club. And bringing it back to Port, it's just Jed McEntee's asked to play a role. Whether you think he does the role well, that's an objective, constructive criticism conversation that you can have, but you don't have to get personal about it. That's all we're saying. It's just It's just...
And again, this is a guy who is a mid-season draft pick. He's 21, 22 years
I think he's 23 or 24 now, but
is he?
Yeah, I think he is, yeah. But he's still a younger player. He's still a younger player
than him.
Yeah. Yeah, you can
on the
continue. I'm
fly.
just, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, I'm going to
Oh,
Google it, but my
I mean,
phone just,
yeah, I've pretty much said all I want to say in regards to Jed McEntee.
yeah.
Like, yeah, poor, is he going to get picked? Signs would say yes, which, yeah, I think in regards to Quinton Nark was very unlucky. He went back to the SANFL and he played an absolute fucking blinder. He led us in pretty much every key statistic, and oh yeah, not only led us, he shitted in. He ticked every box you could possibly tick. Um, but signs would say that Jed's going to be picked. So in that regard, I hope he fucking nails the role that he's given, because
Yeah.
it's going to be an important one.
Yeah.
Whether it's just pure pressure forward in your Sam Powell Pepper type areas, or if it's doing a job on Tom Stewart, I hope he backs it up from round 9 because he played a fucking great role in that game.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the thing is like the biggest thing takeaway out of that round 9 game was the application and there was a lot of coaching went into that, and the players knew their roles, understood what was expected of them, and in particular those little dark arts roles that McEntee and co were, and the attention we gave to players, which again to not, I don't know why Crows fans have come up a lot, but Crows fans that were clutching at their pearls after the showdown, you're allowed to target players.
That's exactly right. That's a great part of professional sport.
Yeah, we do.
It's your job to combat that.
Yeah, it happens.
Or your club's job.
Yeah, it happens in soccer. It happens in basketball. It happens.
Happens in every
NFL is different, but there's certain players that will have like a corner or safety's role will be to be really tight on the wide receiver when he breaks off the line. Like you have different styles of coverage depending on the player that you're matched up on. And and bringing it back to AFL.
And NFL is a bit more, it's set plays.
Yeah, but you still have roles that you play, and sometimes,
absolutely
hit players. I was watching Hard Knocks recently, and they were talking about Hard Knocks.
Nice.
It's a great show. Like I love that kind of stuff. I think it was Miami playing this is just a fun way to finish off on, but it does have a point. They're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, and Max Crosby, who's one of the just great defensive players that plays for the Raiders, they were training for the game, and they were getting their quarterback. They were getting the guy in training to hit their like just give the quarterback pushes and shoves after every training play, because they were like, this is how Max Crosby, like even if a play is done, he'll come through and just give you a shove to the chest. He'll close. That's attention, and that happens, and that's going to happen in the AFL, and it's okay. They were like, this is a great thing that he does, but we have to combat it. That's like the player he is. He makes sure that you're aware of his presence at in every play, and that's kind of what we have done to. The bump with Rankin was a separate thing, but giving tight attention to players, we cop it. HORNE-FRANCIS copped it in the middle part of the season, and hopefully a few Geelong players cop it this week as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Jed McEntee's 23.
There we go. I pulled my phone out and then completely
I think we
forgot to
drafted
finish.
him at 21 in the mid-season is what I'm thinking of.
Still quite young though.
It still doesn't discount anything that I've said. Like in regards to supporting your fucking club and keeping your assessments constructive rather than hyper personal.
Yeah. And that's just a good way to act in general life as well.
I agree.
Yeah. That's about, I guess, the only thing. What would be your ballpark score or a specific score? How are you feeling going into it?
Well, before I do that, I do think it would be a bit of an interesting exercise just to see what kind of, we've spoken a lot about selection, like maybe making a prediction on selection and then the score. In regards to changes from the Freo game to our side. So yeah, I might as well go first. So my changes for the game I would make is Visentini. Farrell obviously out, Visentini out. And I think it would be Dixon in and Sin in. And that means that Narkle misses out and McEntee stays.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because of what we just chatted about. I think the signs would say that McEntee played a full game against Freo. And signs would say that they're giving him a warm-up to play a full game against Geelong. So that's why my preferred option is what I said before. I think Narkle deserves to be there from a holistic point of view, although he would probably be the sub anyway, and Frankie would start on the field. But I think, the changes that we'll see on Thursday are Vizentini out, Farrell obviously out, and Dixon and Josh Sin come in. From a score prediction, I think a nice conservative 1 goal per quarter leading to a 4-goal win on the night is probably where I'm at. Finals are obviously a very, very hotly contested game, and a lot of things can happen within that game. Although, we have a good record against Geelong in home qualifying finals. I expect it to be stressed to the hilt, and breaking their back to win by 4 goals.
Yeah. Just being that you're piggybacking off that, that's exactly where I'm at on the score. I took that as I was like, I was like a 1.5 goals a quarter. I'm at about between 4 and 5 goals. So that's very similar thought on the selection. I'm straight down the barrel with both Sin and Dixon, like you said, coming in for those. That's just straight swaps for me. Obviously with Burton maybe starting and seeing how that goes, and then just flipping the magnets as you need to. I tend to think that McEntee probably gets the role, but I'm still just like, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a surprise there that they were just getting him some reps because they think
maybe foxing a little bit.
Because they probably wanted to get him some time on the side because they think they might need him at some point.
They might need him.
But I do think that. I don't know where they go with that. I'm a bit unsure, so I'm just going to go the safe bet and say maybe they go unchanged there and McEntee stays in the side. Who do you think, if just as to finish the exercise, if we are assuming McEntee starts, who's the sub? Because Frankie and Narkle are both.
It would be Frankie, which I think is tough.
Interesting that we're
picking
between two former Geelong players in that role. But,
Narkle and Frankie. Well, Frankie, possession's 9/10 of law, so Frankie played against Freo. I'd say that he stays if Jed does keep his spot, and unfortunately that would mean that Frankie's a sub.
Which I've enjoyed.
The impact on the scoreboard.
I'm reasonably confident whenever he gets the ball in good range of goal, and he does provide a lot of other stuff down there as well. So. Big one coming up. Looking forward to being there. We'll figure out the details in the next few days as travel happens and whatnot. But I know you and I are going to try and meet up before the game, and we might just
really hopeful to finish work at a decent time and then maybe head into home ground on the riverbank there. So again, anyone listening or watching, if you wanted to come say hi, get in touch for sure.
And keep an eye on the socials.
Where we are and what we can do.
Keep an eye on this, like the Twitter account as well, because I'll post, if we end up there and we're there, and I'll just say we're here now, and you can pop past, say good day, have a beer, whatever your desired beverage is. We'll be there for it. I'll certainly be having beers. Just one more thing. Really excited for it. One more thing to finish off on. You brought it up a couple of days ago, and I've only just remembered at the end of recording this, just a shout out to Dan Houston and Zach Butters being all Australians again. And
yes.
Zach Butters being voted by his peers, as in other players, as in the opposition fans that are losing their minds about Butters being a flopper, a diver, and a grub. It is your favourite players that voted for him to be a back-to-back most courageous player in the league. So, but great that we.
True.
I don't know what your expectations were for All Australian. I was like, Dan Houston's probably my most lock one. I wasn't sure. I thought, HORNE-FRANCIS unlucky to miss out, but it is. I'm objective enough to know this is a 22. Like someone's going to miss out at some point. But I was glad to see Butters at least. Like to get 2 representatives in there, I thought was fair. We've talked at times that we've probably got players, and it'll be interesting. Really intrigued by the Brownlow count, not because I think any of our players will win, but just how the voting goes. Because there's been games that any one of our 3 our main 3 young stars could have got 3 votes sometimes, and I'll be really intrigued how that goes. And
And Ollie Wines is typically a good vote getter for Port Adelaide across his history, as well, he's won the Brownlow. So yeah, I thought initially I thought that Butters would miss, but then the closer it got to the night, I just thought you have to, like, if you're picking a best 22, Butters is one of the best 22 players of the league this year. And I did expect him to be on the interchange, though, because of some of the seasons of the people he was competing against for spots.
Yeah.
But
and he probably just did have a couple
I was like, you just can't leave him out. He's just that good of a player, and he has had that good of a year. Like, even though he's battled through a tag, it's a 24-round season plus overround. But yeah, so Houston definitely, I agree, was a lock because of.
It was interesting. Some of the pundit teams didn't have him in at all. Like I think was it Brad Johnson? I feel like it was one I saw that just didn't have Houston in. And I was but the official Australian team is all that matters now. So, and Dan Houston's back to back, and Zach Butters is back to back.
And it seems that he's staying too.
Yes,
so keep extending upon this episode.
I know you need to. I know you need to bounce soon.
Large, it looks like we'll hopefully go deep and hopefully break our drought, and then it seems like we'll have our All-Australian halfbacker pulling on the jumper again next year to hopefully go again.
Yeah. And if anyone hasn't known what we're talking about, Dan Houston was on, which has been his weekly spot on, as I said on Twitter, Tweedledum and Tweedlefuck. I have no qualms with just actively, deriding them.
Shitting on David Penberthy.
Penberthy in particular. Even, I think, friend of the pod and friend of the show, Jack, pointed out in the replies to my tweet, just even Penberthy's language in talking to Houston, like, after what you did to Rankin, it's just like it was a legal action on the field. Get Razor Ray on your show to talk about it.
Yeah, I threw up in my mouth a little bit when, I watched that and heard what he said.
Yeah, I was just like, God, you just can't fucking get out of your own sanctimonious way. It's ridiculous. But Houston has been a weekly part of that show, which is an interesting side note to the history of that show. Is like a lot of the guys that they have as their weekly correspondent from either team often leaves.
Who have left?
Yeah, because Fantasia, I think, was the last one, and the Crows Day was their last one from the Crows. So Tweedledum and Tweedlefuck. We're talking about the curse of the 5AA guy, but Houston was pretty strong in his language that I'm staying at Port. I won't be leaving Port Adelaide next year. Now, the Twitter, the people that like to go down the rabbit hole of absolute conspiracy were like, well, he said that he won't leave next year because he already leaves at the end of this year. And someone did point out like because they at the end of the bit there was like, Penbo and Will were like, so it sounds like you're saying, and Houston's like laughing, going, sounds like I am, and it's just like, again, I'm cynical enough to know that until the end of trade period happens, and I think it's actually just a happy medium that he's happy to stay, the club's happy for him to stay, but it's actually just putting it basically that if you want to get him, you have to provide everything we want. He's not going to request a trade. He's happy to go back if it happens, but he's not going to request a trade. So the negotiating power is in our court. And
we've actually seen this before.
Yeah.
With several of our players who have ultimately stayed. So it just goes to show what a good culture we have as a club. As Rosie said in his press conference before the Showdown, I think it was, he noted that we have a pretty good record of retaining players once they're in our club. So, you take it on face value. Like I said to you and a few people I know, wouldn't take Houston for someone to just flat out lie in that regard. And, so all signs point to him representing us in 2025.
Yeah, and the only way I see him leaving again is if it's a deal that we as Port Adelaide fans, after our disappointment at him leaving, would probably sit there and say, we got a pretty good fucking deal. And that's the only way I see it happening. But, I'm very reasonably confident he will now. But again, the cynic in me just says wait until the end of trade period.
Wait and see.
Yeah, don't be surprised at anything occurring in between now and then. But I just don't think any teams have got the capital, or if they have the capital, they're not exactly sure if they want to pull that trigger as far as making that move.
The draft's supposedly pretty good this year.
It is,
so
yeah.
If you do have first rounders, they want to use them at their own club.
Yeah, I think even if you go all the way down to pick 12, 13, you're pretty confident you're getting a damn good player. So, yeah, it could be just next year. It might come up again, and maybe that's the time with 2 years left on the contract, the club and him come together. But, yeah, I just think this year doesn't seem like it's likely. Anyway, I know we've run a bit over time. You, again, thank you for giving me 2 hours of your Father's Day.
No worries at all.
Yes, I appreciate it. And, yeah, next time we do this, it'll be in the same time zone, so that's fun. But yeah, there won't be any more recordings before the qualifying final. So a massive night coming up. And of course, keep an eye out for your Lady Pear on the Friday night as well, over in Melbourne. And get behind them, as we said on the preview. Memberships for the ladies are quite cheap. Get a lot of value out of them. And Alberton's, there's not much better places in the world to go watch sport than Alberton Oval. So yeah, get around them. And yeah, I don't think I need to say get around the men because that's absolutely happening. The game's a sellout as well. So yeah, it's going to be a massive night. Adelaide Oval, nothing more to say. Carn the finals bound pair.
Yeah, Carn the pair.